Hello. Okay, Immaculate, a psychological horror movie. I've been looking forward to checking this out. It appears that this film has worked for a lot of people, and a lot of people are sort of raving about this third act within the movie, and then maybe it hasn't worked for a load of other people as well. So I was definitely intrigued by this film. And so yeah, Immaculate, which follows Cecilia, a woman of devout faith who is warmly welcomed to the picture-perfect Italian countryside where she is offered a new role at an illustrious convent. But it becomes clear to Cecilia that her new home harbours dark and horrifying secrets. Okay. So what really worked for me with this movie was how it looked, how it was shot, the cinematography, and how well they were able to immerse me anyway into this world, into this setting, and into a lot of these moments within the movie. And I feel like they did a great job at creating atmosphere and tension. This is one moment in the first act. It's one of the very first scenes, the very first moment in fact. And the way in which it's shot, it feels so claustrophobic. Like you're in this sort of... I'm trying not to say too much because I obviously want this to be spoiler free. But you're in this kind of very tight space with another character. And you feel like you're in that very tight space with that character. And it does. It's a very stressful moment because the way in which they shoot this moment is just so claustrophobic, and they just, like I said, do a really good job at transporting you into these moments and into these scenes through the way in which the film is shot. And there's many of these moments within the film that do the same thing. And it's just down to the way in which they shot and how they play out. Just the atmosphere, the tension, it's all there. Sydney Sweeney playing Cecilia. She's absolutely fantastic in this film. Her performance is fantastic. She's great. And I sort of buy or believe in her character. But unfortunately for me, personally, as good as Sydney Sweeney is at playing this character, and like she is really, really good, and I buy into her, I just feel like the character just needed a little bit more development and depth so I could understand the character a little bit more and sort of be able to emotionally connect to the character more. Because even though I do care for this character on some level, I'm never really sort of as emotionally kind of swallowed up. I'm not as emotionally involved, I feel, with this character and her journey like I should be. So when it comes to that kind of emotional impact that I really need when it comes to this character and what it is that she experiences at certain points in the film, for me was just lacking, because I just felt like there was this big disconnect there between myself and this character of Cecilia. And if it wasn't for Sydney Sweeney and her performance, then I think I may not have cared at all. Don't get me wrong, we do get a bit of history or a bit of backstory behind Cecilia and why she turned to religion, but for me it just wasn't quite enough. I just never found myself really fully understanding her to really get emotionally kind of involved and swallowed up with her journey. But at the same time, I was engrossed, I was immersed, and I was with this character because to some degree I did care for her. So even though I had an issue with character development, it wasn't enough to stop me from wanting to be on this journey with Cecilia. And like I said, a lot of this is down to Sydney Sweeney's brilliant performance, and how she brings his character to life is what sort of kept me sucked into this story and sucked into this movie, along with the technical aspect, like I've previously said, with the way in which the film is shot and how it looks. And when it comes to this story and this character's journey, these characters, these nuns, and what's going on at this convent, we are sort of exploring familiar territory. This is, somewhat a story that we've seen before. There is a twist, which I'll be honest, I was on board with, but I felt like it was the execution within this twist, within the story, and how it was handled. It somewhat ends up sucking this movie down into like almost like a gravity well of being this generic horror movie that I was really hoping that it didn't. And another way of sort of explaining it really is, you know, this movie is quite ambiguous and it's quite bold. I felt like, it's attempting to be quite bold with what it is they're sort of exploring within the story. But then there are certain moments, like I said, for example, in how it handles that twist, where it kind of loses that kind of approach, you could say, and just ends up unfortunately falling into that kind of gravity well of just being this generic horror movie. At the same time, it's also a very familiar horror movie that we've seen before that I felt was done pretty well and does a great job at creating this kind of unsettling, disturbing atmosphere, and sort of like, you know, you kind of get hints of what potentially is going on. And then, so I suppose as a result, the film is just a little bit inconsistent with how it sort of tells this story and the way in which they want to sort of tell the story and what's going on with these characters. And I feel like for the most part it's done pretty well, and it's done in a way that kind of keeps you guessing, and you are immersed into this mystery of what it is that's going on. But then when it comes to sort of the execution of sort of, like I said, that twist and that kind of reveal, it does kind of spiral more down into that generic route of horror. And then we sort of get the very, you know, that third act, which again, it's very tense. And I love the way in which it's shot, where you got Cecilia sort of trying to escape from this priest. And then there's this moment where she just, you know, like I said, I'm not going to say too much because this is spoiler free, but she just screams. And good God, you know, Sydney Sweeney can scream. And it's a moment that is impactful, not quite as emotionally impactful as I wanted it to be, again going back to sort of the character development side of it, but it definitely left me in sort of like this state of being in a mix of emotions. Like I had a mix of emotions when it comes to this certain moment within the third act, at, you know, the conclusion of this film. And in a good way. I mean this in a good way, because I felt like the film was challenging me in ways that I really wanted it to do. And it's sort of like, yeah, it challenged me in a way that I felt was really positive, but at the same time was a bit frustrated because, again, I was still feeling that disconnect with the character of Cecilia. And when it comes to the gore, the blood, the death scenes, the violence, you know, this is not the bloodiest movie or horror movie you'll ever see. But when you do get those moments, they are brutal. And I really dug it because it's as a result of the brutality with these sort of certain deaths and violence that kind of, it's quite impactful and it's quite disturbing, and it has that kind of effect on you where you've got to turn your head, well, I felt like anyway, where it sort of, I had to turn my head away from the screen. And it's just the way in which these moments would play out. It is at times exploitive, but feels very real, and it does exactly what these moments are supposed to do, which is like, just really get under the skin. And yeah, I mean, I really like this film. It didn't 100% work for me, but I was immersed, I was engrossed, I was intrigued, I was swallowed up by the mystery of what it was that was going on. There are moments which unsettled me and left me a little bit disturbed. And so it was provoking also different emotions, more so in the third act, or, you know, the film's conclusion. And it challenged me in ways that, yeah, I felt a mix of emotions that really kind of, you know, challenged me because of what it was I was feeling during this certain moment, which I won't reveal due to this being spoiler free. So I liked overall how the film and what it was they were attempting to do with this story, but it does sort of falter in certain moments for me, and I feel like the development behind our lead character, Cecilia, played beautifully by Sydney Sweeney. I mean, her performance is fantastic, but I just needed a bit more development around this character, so I could understand this character just perhaps a little bit more. But yeah, I enjoy this experience. It's a solid little film. I do recommend it, and I think, you know, there are people who are going to love it a hell of a lot more than I did, and there may be people out there who just don't rate it at all and were like, what the hell is that? But for me, I really, really enjoyed the film. I did like the movie, and I thought the score as well. I'm not sure who did the score. So the music is by a Will Bates, and yeah, I really, really dug it. It sort of really kind of taps into that kind of religious aspect of the film, and at times kind of reminded me a little bit of The Omen, perhaps. But yeah, you know, the score along with the cinematography and how the film was shot, they really did a good job at transporting you into this isolated kind of setting. And there was a lot of moments where they just did a fantastic job at creating suspense and tension and just, you know, creating this atmosphere. So yeah, they are my thoughts on Immaculate, and I will be giving Immaculate a 7 out of 10. So yeah, they are my thoughts on Immaculate, but what did you guys think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you agree or disagree with anything I've said? Then please let me know in the comments below, and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, then thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to watch future reviews and just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot. My next review will be for Godzilla x Kong, the New Empire. I'm really looking forward to checking it out. I'm a big Godzilla and King Kong fan. I can't say I'm a massive fan of the Monsterverse, but, you know, sometimes I do want some just sort of mindless fun where you've got two big titans sort of just smashing each other into pyramids and all of that. And I am also hoping to catch Mother's Instinct, and hopefully I'll get a review up for that early next week. But yeah, thanks again for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll be catching you guys soon.